Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. So I have another Korea true crime and mystery story for you. Get your tea because it's going to be a long one. You might want to get something a little bit bigger than this cup because that's not going to be enough for what we're going to go over today. This involves another case where a woman had taken out insurance on her loved ones, and it seemed like there was nothing good that ever happened to people who were around her. And in the K-Beauty review, I'm gonna tell you about tone-up cream. What the heck is tone-up cream? How do you use it, and why is it beneficial for you if you especially have discoloration or hyperpigmentation? And the added benefit is that it's also an SPF. All that coming up. Stay tuned. Okay, from the title you may surmise that we're going to be talking about a Mrs. What is going on with all of these people mysteriously getting blinded, burned, and then dying, and then having a hefty insurance payout? Well, Mrs. was this young hot thing, in her 20s back in the year 2000. So this case spans 2000 to 2005. She got married, I guess, around when she was about 25, and she seemed to be the perfect girl, really angelic and quiet and pretty and slim, and she fit all of the categories. So she married her first husband, and what was really weird is that one day he woke up not being able to see. But before we get to that point, apparently, he had been hospitalized about 10 times. One instance, he said that, he was feeling a little bit under the weather, so he took some Tylenol, and then suddenly, he didn't realize how he fell and, hit his seating bone. What do you call it? When you hurt your behind, there's tailbone. He hurt his tailbone, so they went to the hospital. That was really shady because he didn't remember what happened. Well, apparently, she had figured out an MO, a modus operandi, of always spiking food, drink, anything that she can get her hands on, saying oh, this is great for your health, spiking it with a sleeping medication. Now, she had signed up her husband for 3 insurance policies, and again, she was somebody who worked in the insurance field, so she knew what she was doing. She planned this to a T. She adopted this perfect girl demeanor, and when she had drugged him and then gone into his room, took a pin and started, blinding her husband. Her husband said that, I don't remember what happened. And what she told the doctors and officials was that, my husband has some mental issues and I think he did it himself. He stabbed himself. And then the husband was like, I guess maybe I did that. Not sure. Well, they got back home. And then a few months later, she gave her husband another sleeping pill and then poured hot oil all over his face. So he had 4th degree burns. And if you're not familiar with 4th degree burns, it goes through the layers of the skin, the underlying tissue, deeper tissue, and possibly involving the muscle and the bone. So then, of course, he had to go into the hospital for treatment. And apparently, to pay his hospital bills, she befriended somebody else who was a caretaker. Here in Korea, You cannot depend on nurses to do all of the functions that are, like bathing or helping to the bathroom. They don't do any of that. In Korea, unfortunately, you have to almost always, if you are hospitalized, have somebody there taking care of you, like a family member. They stay there all the time. It's a little bit more, I guess, there's no really like visiting hours because they expect the family member to be right next to them. And the way that medical costs are a lot less expensive, I think that's one. And then also, like, if you don't pay super expensive like hotel rates to get your own room, it's very affordable to stay in the hospital, but you're in a room with like sometimes 8 people, 10 people, 12 people, maybe even 16 people. It all has like cheaper prices the more people are in the room. So she was able to make friends with somebody who was taking care of another loved one. And apparently she spiked some strawberries with some sleeping pills. And so when this new friend that she made at the hospital fell asleep, she dug through her purse, got her card, and then paid the medical bills of her husband. So really, really, I don't know where she's getting all these sleeping pills, but she had a modus operandi. Then apparently he had died, her husband, from cellulitis, which is a common bacterial skin infection that causes redness, swelling, and pain in the infected area. And it was at the point of where the IV was. So people were just like, what is going on? Like, he's getting infected wherever the IV is. And they would move the IV around, but yet infected. And then so he died of essentially cellulitis. Maybe it's like sepsis or something. She's probably like rubbing her dirty hands all over it and then trying to give him a bacterial infection that would make him go away. Why? Because the payout was about $300,000 when he died. And it was not only 1 month later when she got married again to her second husband. She had a fast courtship. They lived together right away. And then one day, he also went to the emergency room for collapsing and hitting his tailbone. It was a quick recovery, but when she was in the hospital, she would always go over the top to try to show like what a dutiful wife she was, how perfect and angelic. So that was her cover. A lot of the times, psychopaths, they will use the identities that we value as a society to escape some sort of suspicion. So people who could be suspicious or maybe there's a red flag, you tend to ignore it if you're saying like, oh, but she's so dedicated to taking care of her husband. How could she? No, there's probably nothing suspicious about it, although there's like sus stuff everywhere going on. So she did the same thing to her second husband. She gave him some sort of drink or food that had a sleeping pill in it. And then when he fell asleep, she poked his eyes with a needle and caused blindness. Now in insurance, the top payout is death. The second top payout is blindness. So she was basically trying to double dip. First get the insurance payout for blindness, and then get the insurance payout for an eventual death. Death from what? Injuries like that they can't recover from. So after she brought him back to the hospital, she said, oh, I'm pregnant. We should register marriage, because I guess they weren't officially married at that point. So while he was getting treated in the hospital for his eyes, again, there was the cellulitis, the bacterial infection in his skin at the IV points, and then he had died from that as well. So of course she wanted to seem like the dutiful daughter, but she also wanted to, I guess, officially get her hands on the insurance and make it look like she was the victim. That's also how she was able to get away with so much of her crimes, is her ability to say like, wait, but I'm also a victim because I just lost my husband. And to prove that, she said that she wanted to do a ghost marriage. This is like after the fact. And then so why would she do this? And it seems a little bit odd, right? But to the family who had just lost their son, they thought that, oh, this is so sweet. She still wants to officially get married to our son. So they had like a strange wedding where like she was, all dressed up and she got officially married to her dead husband. And so that sort of threw the family off the track. But later on, they're just like, that was psycho. Because you have to see, like, now that she's done it twice, she's being a little bit more careful. But even back then in that day and age, they didn't really have like these databases where you can link, information. So if you really wanted to dig, like how the first husband died, how this husband died, like it would be really hard to do if you weren't clued in on something suspicious. So if she's doing this whole wedding, it makes her look less suspicious. But the investigators, at first they were like, this sounds a little bit weird, but how could she be somebody evil? She seems so dutiful. But then when they saw the records of the first husband's death, of course, it looks so obvious. So when they went to go investigate Mrs. And question her, she suddenly fainted. She pretended she fainted. And then when they went to the hospital, they found nothing wrong with her. So the investigators were like really suspicious. So they're like, okay, let's go and investigate a little bit more by meeting Mrs. Family to find some direct evidence, because everything here seems like red flags, but not evidence enough to really arrest her or charge her with something. Well, then the investigator went to the house. What did they find? That the older brother answered and like, oh, hey, hi, nice to meet you. Like, he was blind as well. The mother, blind as well. And so they also had a younger brother who seemed at this point had not been affected yet. And so the investigators were just like, this is really shady. But she didn't get charged because there wasn't really much to nab her on. So what did she get out of the mother and the brother? Well, apparently the mother, she spiked a juice with sleeping medicine, blinded her mom the same way with a needle, got $70,000 for her mom's blindness through the insurance policy. The older brother, same thing. She spiked a drink with sleeping medicine, but for him, she poured hydrochloric acid all over his face and blinded him, and he was admitted to the hospital. She wanted him gone, and she went to the hospital to try to poison his IV, but the nurses standing by, were really good with security, so she wasn't able to do that. And she was not caught. We only know this after the fact because when she eventually did get arrested, she also admitted to that. The older brother, still alive, angry, he says like, I want to kill her. I want to kill that bee because I can't believe what she did to me. And he's like, if she just wanted money, there were other ways he could have. He said like she could have just left us, intact physically, but they're basically disabled for life. Now, years into this process, if anybody really took a close look, it looked like there is a repeating pattern here. And so she had to try to change her method. And so what did she choose? Arson. Now she's gonna burn the house down. So when she was living all together with her blind mother, blind older brother, and then younger brother, and the kids were like here and there, from the first and second husband, but they eventually both passed away as well. There's less information on exactly how the kids died because I think out of respect for the children. So here's the setup for the fire of her own house. But it really wasn't her own house, it was her mom's house. And she had sold the house without any of them knowing. And on the day they were supposed to move out, like all their stuff was still there. They were still living there, like they didn't know what was going on. So she got some pomegranate juice and said like, oh, this is great for your eyes. She drugged it. She drugged her whole family. She set fire to the place. So all of them did survive, but she was really like the only one awake. and they all had to get treated for smoke inhalation, including her. And so that's how she also evaded responsibility, because she's saying, like, I was also a victim here. I don't know how this fire happened, but like I had to, like she had insurance records saying that she was in a fire and she had to be treated for smoke inhalation. What'd she get? $300,000 of insurance money from that stunt, and she had sold the house. And so I guess that's a quick way to move. Burn up all your stuff. You got nothing to pack. So then where did she go? Well, apparently her son was at a babysitter or a housekeeper. I guess they had like a housekeeper that came in every now and then, and she knocked on the door and said like, oh, I'm sorry, like, like we have no place to stay, or I have no place to stay. It seems as if like the other family members were being in the hospital treated with more serious injuries, and so she was just there. And then they're like, okay, yeah, sure, you can stay here for a while. But it seemed like she was never going to move out. And there was a agreed upon date where she would move out. She got mad because she was being confronted, and what happened? She set the house on fire. And this time, the housekeeper's husband died from the fire. The housekeeper survived and had to be admitted to the hospital for treatment. Of course, she wanted to get rid of the housekeeper too. It looks like she didn't put an insurance policy on the housekeeper, and this is now where she is acting a little bit more carelessly out of rage. And so she went to the hospital and she brought some gasoline, and she was like sprinkling gasoline all over the place, and she wanted to burn up the hospital room as well. And she got caught. But then she said she kind of got out of it, saying like, oh, well, if I lit the fire, I would have died too, and I would see my dead daughter in heaven, so why would I ever do that? And then so the police were like, okay, fine, we're still going to keep you under questioning, but we're not going to detain you. So now she's being watched officially, but she's not detained. So she's going out around like, pulling more stunts. 2 months later, she went to the hospital again because her son needed treatment. And there again, she befriended somebody, a girlfriend of a guy who was hospitalized. And so the girlfriend was taking care of the guy. And I guess they were using the guy's credit card for things here and there. And then when it seemed like, I guess the girl was like, okay, you're kind of like crossing the line here, like don't, we can't like use this card like for everything. And Mrs. Got mad again. And what did she do? She fed this girl sleeping pills. She used a needle and blinded her right eye, and then took the card and then charged $9,000 to pay off the medical fees for her son. Now, she couldn't just leave it there, right? Because she had to get rid of these people. So then she went in to the bed area where the IV was for the boyfriend, and she inserted some sort of pink liquid, like poison or medicine, and it caused a heart attack. He survived. She did it 3 times in a row. Now, this is when her younger brother went himself to the police and found the detective and investigator in charge of her case and said like, look, my sister is a dangerous woman. For some reason, everyone around her, nothing good ever happens to them. They either end up dead or disabled or blinded or burned, or all these horrible things are happening. You have to stop her. Well, 12 days later, she was detained by police for questioning. And she had already had another boyfriend at this point. She evaded the death penalty. So if you're wondering like, okay, there's like a lot of lenient cases where people are shocked with like people doing so many bad things and they just get like, a few years here and there. Maybe then the sentence gets suspended and people are just like, well, Korea, we don't really punish. So what does it take for like the death sentence? Not even this. Basically in Korea, the death penalty is legal, but in practice we don't do it. So she did get life in prison. So this is what it takes. top level psychopathic behavior, maybe then finally you'll get a life sentence in jail. She showed no humiliation for her crimes, but she showed that she was ashamed for failing. All these incidents, she said, weren't because of what I did wrong. It was because I let my words slip. She said that it was her fault that she got arrested. She had pity for herself for getting caught, not for what she did. Her targets were always those closest to her. Her goal was the insurance money, and she did this indirectly with sleeping pills and lethal injuries. She never has apologized or issued any self-reflection statement. If she had a good lawyer, they would have made up a self-reflection statement, and apparently they have writing services just for that, to appeal to judges and then get you off, but she wouldn't even do that. You're probably wondering, where did she spend all this money? Because apparently she spent all the insurance money. The tally that they were able to find out of the insurance scams that they were able to research was about $600,000, and people around her were also interviewed. They said that she basically was living the life of a millionaire, like clothes, expensive clothes, just eating out, and probably, going to adult entertainment services. They said that she was just hedonistic. But when she was asked what happened to the money, she said that, because of depression, she fell into drugs. And so they tested her for drugs, and it came out negative. Like, she never did drugs. And so people are just like, what the heck is wrong with this girl? Observers are saying that she is essentially very, 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 very high, if not the highest on the psychopathic scale. There's a 40-point measurement that some psychiatrists and psychologists use, and even the most horrible psychopaths or serial killers don't always get 40 out of 40, but people are thinking she's 40 out of 40. From 25 and above, you gotta be careful. If you hit over 25, you might not be a serial killer, but you are definitely one to stay away from. The good news now is that these types of crimes, the way that she did it, people are saying is a little bit harder to pull off. There are now investigation units within the police department specifically for insurance fraud crimes. And the insurance companies as well are a little bit more careful, although we're here in 2022 and we're still going over the Psycho River Killers case, and that was also insurance related, and she was at least able to get a lot of shady policies. She wasn't able to get the payout for the biggest one against, her husband's demise, but still we're grappling with this. And then if you haven't seen the other video where our current president, while he was campaigning, was blaming foreigners for health insurance fraud, saying like, they're coming here for like surgery, and then charging it up to the tab of South Korean taxpayers. Well, and you should also know from people close to you that insurance fraud is more lethal, deadly, destructive among the way that Korean people have been using this for decades. So look in your own house first. And again, even the National Health Insurance Agency here in Korea, because we have nationalized health insurance, they say that we would not be profitable if it weren't for immigrants and foreigners who work in Korea paying these insurance payouts, because if it weren't for them, they would be in the red, in a deficit every single year. So foreigners who actually come here to work and don't really use the medical system are the ones keeping it afloat, Mr. Yoon. So what do you think? I mean, this is super scary and creepy. Thank goodness she's been locked up and she's still there apparently, and hopefully she will stay, because a person like that does not change, and apparently she seems to have rage. But the scary thing is, like I said, she covered it under being like the perfect Korean girl. Oh, and yeah, how did she get married so well? Lies. She said that her older brother worked for like the Korean military academy. Lies. Younger brother was sent abroad to study in America. Lies. Basically, that shows like social status position, and said that, oh, she was a teacher at a elite kindergarten. Also lies. And then she also said that like her father had passed away but left them with like $1 million inheritance. Also a lie. So everything that came out of this woman's mouth was a lie, and way too many people around them believed it. And that's why it's harder to catch these psychos earlier on. It should not take a whole community becoming blinded, burned, and killed in order for finally people are just like, oh, I guess she's not a good person. Yeah, check it earlier. Okay, now time for K-Beauty review. We're going to go over today tone-up cream. This is a popular tone-up cream. This is pink undertones. This is yellow undertones. They have this other one that's purple. I don't know if that's purple undertones, but I didn't have the budget to like try out the purple one as well, because this one actually worked better on my skin. Also, you have now sunscreens being marketed as also a tone-up lotion with SPF. And so this is a sample that I got from Innisfree, and it also has cica, which is essentially a popular botanical ingredient these days that claims to reduce inflammation or redness. The way I like to think about this is like the anti-blush, where you're red in places you shouldn't be red, and then, you know, you put on blush later on in order to get a more smooth canvas for your skin and almost make it look like you have like a porcelain doll kind of luminosity coming from underneath. If you are red, especially, I hate to say it, but like I think the American way of skincare is way too harsh on your skin, because in order to sell a product, everyone's saying like, oh, there's some sort of like acid in it, or even vitamin C, and definitely the retinols, which is fine if it's like one part of your step, but the way that I've noticed the American products is that you are incrementally putting more and more and more acid, and so suddenly you're like kind of like raw meat and red. So this would be good, because you don't want to go on a red canvas with your makeup if you wear makeup for your, you know, foundation, and especially if you have some problem areas, hyperpigmentation, you want to put more makeup on it because the color tones won't match. So you try to do that more from the beginning with a tone-up cream. And a tone-up cream, I think, maybe needs a little bit more skill to use, because if you just like spread this all over your face, you'll look like a Casper the Ghost, because it does have a bit of a whitening effect, and you have to get the color right. So this is more pink tones, this is more yellow tones, and this was really white. So honestly, I can't use this one because I tried to use it in the, you know, my technique with the BB cream. You can see the other video, my beauty secrets, and it was too white. Now, what I would say with this is use it almost like an anti-concealer, or concealer, but concealer that's not a colored concealer on areas where you have redness or ruddiness, like especially, I guess, if you have rosacea or something like that. So this is the pink tone, and a little goes a long way. So I would say you have to be very sparing on it. I'm gonna have to go all the way to my forearm, and it does create like a magical kind of smooth base. Now let's try the yellow. It's a little bit more natural luminous. And then the white. See, this is more like a sunscreen. You know, when you get that kind of like sunscreen face. But in general, see how there's a difference in the skin tone? It's subtle. It's very subtle. It's very natural looking. And then makeup would go over this really well. After this, maybe you even want to put a primer on. But this also is somewhat of a primer as well. They try to say it's kind of like all in one. It's an SPF, it's a tone-up cream, and it's a primer. But I would still put on a primer. And the reason why you want to use this sparingly is that it could also feel a little bit heavy. So that's why I would say like kind of put it, you know, dab it on areas where then you want to start with a uniform canvas and then boom. Put the color on however you do it. So that's the tone up cream. I'll put some links below. I'm not sure if this is available in the United States, but there are many other tone up creams on the market. I'll put some links to what I can find. And this is quite a good one. It was sold by my dermatologist, but it's a mainstream brand, S2ND, and it starts for start to end. All right, guys. Well, what do you think? That was kind of a crazy little like true crime mystery story, wasn't it? And I don't know. Hopefully you drank your tea because that was crazy. Be careful of who you meet in the hospital because you don't want a situation. And kudos to the younger brother for going to the police finally after 5 years, but still going to report this psychopath to take her out of our community. Scary. Just scary. All right, guys, put your comments below and remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.